Blessings, beautiful souls. It's Jules, and I'm super excited about our guest today. I've actually already had the honor of being interviewed by San, and now we're going to turn the tables and we are going to go into tapping into his genius, his wisdom, and there's just so much to unravel here. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Sun Ching, and I'm going to let you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to this moment.
Wow, I'm so grateful that you invited me on your podcast, and I really am looking forward to sharing with your audience. And so, just diving a little bit into my background, sort of like a self exploration of something within my teenage years, really realizing I had to embody a little bit more strength and grounding through discovering, the physical form. I got involved with, bodybuilding and powerlifting for the first, you know, teenage years. Then I had a voice in my mind that said, you need to go deeper. And so at that point in human history, which was many decades ago, we won't go there, but there was this thing called meditation that was sort of a new age sort of idea that was being floated around, and I identified that with like Hare Krishnas and yogis and things of that nature back in those days. And so I went looking for it, and I found a teacher, some little cute little Asian grandmaster in a local sports rec center, and it was in a really bad neighborhood. But long story short, I had my first epiphany, and it was sort of like, this overgrown gorilla attempting to sit in a lotus position, because I was very all about the bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I assumed I wasn't going to get it because mindset was not an option. And so when they said, "Oh, you'll be still and you'll find stillness," it wasn't it didn't process with in my perception. Anyway, in that event, that little exchange, she basically brought me to a place. I don't know, I wouldn't say she brought me. My guides brought a realization that this is what I need to be doing with my life. So she basically, the meditation, there was a bunch of people around outside of the building, screaming, yelling, dogs barking, the whole thing. And and I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to embody this. So next minute she goes, all I want you to do is listen to my voice and everything will fall away. And I'm thinking in my head, yeah, right. Okay, lady, I'm here with a bunch of misfits in some ghetto, and I'm probably going to get shot on the way back to the car. There is no way I'm going to get this. I'm in pain. And the second she said that, Jules, everything fell away.
Mm.
And she started talking, and it was complete silence.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm onto something. And so from that, it blossomed into discovering Taoism, becoming an ordained priest, and now it's 30 years later, and I help teach people sort of this sort of like discovery of consciousness in all things from clairvoyance to mediumship, channeling, healing, and that's in a nutshell. So I'll take a deep breath. And here we are today.
Okay, what a journey. So just because there may be some people that don't even know what Taoism, let's just talk a little bit about what that is and
Yeah.
how you integrate it into obviously you're teaching it, you're doing all these things, but you're also living it. Let's go into that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting sort of like neutral space for a lot of people that may have their own journey, a gnosis, a Gnostic path of realization that has a mystic seed to it. And then you take Taoism, and Taoism really is fundamentally realizing you are all things. Your infinity, your collective consciousness is the universe. So when you acquire that state, and we normally look at it like this, it's a mountain, one side is yin, one side is yang. You go up the mountain and you merge the two together and realize everything is this present moment. And so through that journey, you discover what we call between the breath in and the breath out. Between yin and yang is the wu ji, the stillness. And from the stillness reveals the mother of all things, the Tao. And so, oh yeah, you're picking up what I'm putting down, my friend. I got because a lot of people don't realize that we reference the mother and that the Tao is very much a very high concentration of yin and yang energy, but it's extremely insightful when you access the yin energy and any frequency. You'll access a level of intuition that goes beyond this 3D reality, and that's a gateway that goes into many layers. But it becomes a really powerful realization for any seeker, any practitioner, any person that wants to merge from the philosophy, the metaphysical aspect of Taoism, or maybe a little bit more on the religious side, where I want people to be very clear. The religious aspect as a Taoist priest is more that we look into these different facets within Taoism that are representative of these immortals that are facets of what we call the diamond, which is all consciousness. And you're just looking at a different facet of that diamond and realizing. And a new age version would be the Akashic records, the halls of Amente, an awakening, an alert, access to source. And so people find it really a great way to start to realize their true self, whatever that means to them, but accessing the present moment, which is the most powerful realization. And I know that you're really familiar with it because you do incredible transformational relationship with the resonances of all the energies within the universe, and it's presented in the things that you teach people, the stuff that you're sharing within your cosmetic line, and all these other things is just so profound. And so that's really the true essence of Taoism, is being present for the now and realizing that everything is right here. And we always talk about let the man who's never left the village, let him know he's seen the world, that you don't have to go anywhere. It's inside you. Does
Mm.
that make sense? Or maybe I wish I never asked that question. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I actually love it. I call that the Google system, that we don't actually even have to go to Google. We can just Google it and just turn on that frequency. And then like you were saying that we use intuition to read the information of the frequency. And I think that's where I want to go, because I feel like that is a hot topic right now, of kind of being able to trust intuition. And that I'm using that word trust because I feel like that is the one place that so many people will take the journey, and then they get to that one place where it's time to actually jump. And then, oh, maybe I don't. And then they turn back. And because it is such a leap to start to hold consciousness in that abstract frequency where we can't identify. And it does take a lot of trust to stay in that space. So I'd love to just open the conversation up to your thoughts on that, to your wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, it really is the epicenter of all things. So now it's like discern or affirm what it is that you're getting information, and where are you getting it from, and how is it being translated into a sort of self-evident, experience-based sort of like reality. So, this is why I really am in love with your messaging, your teaching, all the things that you transmit into this 3D reality, because it's not of this world. People need to understand this is a whole different ball game, and you experience that. You can be in the presence of it, your spoken word, whatever you're putting your attention, intention into, it's evident from a visceral kinesthetic response that you're having within your physical body. And now people can sort of understand that that's a sense of knowing. I always like to remind people, if you're thinking you're not knowing, if you're knowing, you're feeling. It's all the feeling. It's like, it's more than a feeling. And, this is really the critical component to everything that we share. And so intuition is fundamentally, through a word, the access to all things, yet it's conceptual to most people. And so they get caught up in what they call as the sum of their life experiences, the rat race of their emotional content. And, from a dear friend of mine who's a Buddhist monk, he calls it the dukkha, the distortion, which is the emotional content. And so, from my own admission, I'm not asking you to erase your personality. I'm not asking you to erase your emotions. But when you can handle your business, and this is what I teach, I'd love to hear more about what Jules, how she uses her own methods. But you teach the emotion, you realize that your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. And people are like, whoa, this is a fool. Hang on a second. Mommy told me when I was 5 that I'm a bad boy and I'm going to live that way my whole life. And then daddy didn't give me 3 cookies when I was 9, and I didn't get the glass of chocolate milk when I was 11. And so you have this smattering of all these events that some people would define as trauma that becomes sort of deep seated into your physical tissue. And that's why I always go back to the feeling, and how your whole life is a sum of 3 things: thought, feeling, and emotion. And so, how do we decipher the thought, feelings, and emotions and turn them into a wise, whimsical moment of realization? How do you do that? You want to turn it into intuition. So, you want to extract the feeling and the emotion and have that thought being something you can reflect on, but it doesn't affect you in your realization of what this present moment is. So intuition is problematic for a lot of people until they come across someone like yourself or myself, where they start to be empowered. They start to realize they're the true source. They're remembering who they are. And Yugal, I love Yugal. Yugal is really, I mean, that's the new Akashic. We need to erase that Akashic record business. Yugal is it. Yugal is and it's like people, they get sort of into a system. And I believe from myself, Taoism is a method of cultivation. I don't know how that's
I
coming up.
know, it's so funny how that happens. We can have all sorts of stuff start happening
Yeah,
here.
weird things. Taoism is a method of cultivation. It's not your identity.
Mhm.
So I want people to understand that it's a system to master remembering who you are. And I believe, from everything I know of Jules' incredible insight and mastery, a similar formula is being presented in the way that she shares her insight and her Yugal to the world. And I mean, intuition is so critical. People talk about it, but it's conceptual. And we're here to bring it to your reality. So it's not conceptual, that it is this visceral knowing where, and I think the energetic component of the method is so critical, because people think with their head, feel with their heart, get a gut feeling. These are all expressions of something that you didn't realize you were probably even speaking in this language. Most people don't. They're like, oh, yeah, I use that all the time. Well, when you tune yourself, the head, the heart, and the gut becomes fluid. And so when you get a gut feeling, it's dead on accurate. And until you tune yourself, some of these transmissions might be questionable. And this is where what is true to you, then what is a truth, and then someone that brings an absolute truth, I would run in the other direction. But hey, look, that's just me, because there is no right or wrong from a Taoist perspective. It's all gravy, baby. There's 1,000 ways up the mountain, and you just resonate with it. And I mean, that's really, it's like all the BS, all the tongue twisting words and the insight, and you got to go down this path and create all this, deeper layered. Whereas when you just come to this present moment, it's now, and you will feel it and you will experience it, just like Jules and I are experiencing right now. And any of my students or any of the OGs of my channel will feel the evidence based energetic pulse and polarity that's going on back and forth, and the pulsation. It's all happening. And anyway, you probably wish you never asked that question. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I that was I love the way you answered that. And the other thing that was coming to me as you were speaking is we make it more complicated than it is because we feel as though it has to be this magical moment when it's actually so subtle, and we're so trained to have these distractions and everything has to go really fast and we have to be entertained in every second. And when we just go to that place of stillness, it's actually very quiet and subtle and pure. And so we have to retrain the way that we receive information from it being to "Hmm." That's what I was getting when you were talking.
Namaste. Well, yeah, I had a Buddhist, a nun on just the other day, and we had this incredible conversation, and she was high gamma, like, like, someone that you and I know that's super in sync with consciousness, but, like, 5 cups of coffee, and I haven't had 5 cups of coffee, but then she could drop into anything at will, and then she finished with this prayer, and I was high as a kite, my friend. Yes, I'm bathing in it, and it was like, this is a sort of state where when you know who you are, you can drop into this level of consciousness at will, and that's the mastery.
Yes.
That's the mastery, in my opinion, and the more you resonate, the easier it becomes, and it becomes sort of like just like breath. It's just who you are, and you just it's an imprinting of rippling effects of all things, and it just becomes present. Does
I
that
call
make
it
sense? Or-
becoming yeah, I call it becoming consciously unconscious. So we have
Mm,
to become conscious, and then we practice that state of consciousness for a long enough period of time to where we just are holding consciousness without having to try to hold consciousness. And so the consciousness becomes unconscious again. But and then we do it again, and then we do it again until we're holding a higher and higher frequency within that state of unconsciousness. Because I have a saying that so what we're attuning to is that the frequency of source, if you will, if I was to put it in my own language. And then we're using our consciousness as the tool to attune to that intelligence.
mm,
And once we become the intelligence, we don't need consciousness anymore because we're in the purest form of the intelligence.
mm. It's like, are you sure you're not Taoist? I'm not sure. Because it's really strange. There's a 5 stage thing that Latsu, my teacher, I teach people. It starts with concept, consciousness, knowing, unconscious knowing, and then be one with all things. Which kind of sounds, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but it kind of sounds pretty similar to what you're teaching, which is really profound. For me, that's like bing.
You know what I'm feeling in that, and this is what I find really exciting, is that that intelligence is in all things, and it's one frequency. And when we, as in separation, we're using our individual consciousness to attune to this one frequency. But what I love in having conversations like this, or you're kind of meeting other people without even knowing them, you start to speak the same message, but maybe in our own way. But it's because the intelligence is the same in all of us. And as we raise in consciousness, there'll be a day where we're all just speaking as the intelligence. And that's exciting.
Oh, it is. I mean, man, you need to calm down, Sparky. You stop moving your hands around, and I'm getting super high. I need to look conscious right now. I'm getting a little woo. So your little wizardry needs to just amplify it a little bit. Woof. Hey, look, it's so important that people understand that it's not it's your actions, not your words, that you're going to realize. And people just are so stuck in the words, and words are very powerful. I'm not dismissing them. They're part of a seed of a spark that gives you an awareness of whatever it is, but what you're expressing will will be realized. What you're expressing, in my opinion, that's sort of the sum of all things.
That brings me back to a little bit of our conversation before we started recording, and just using discernment when because our body does know the truth. And I'm sure you hear this all the time too, that maybe they don't understand what we're saying, but they understand it in their body, and their body resonates, "Oh, that's true," right? It's that I really discern the difference between feeling and emotion. Emotion is more of the programmed experience, it's the repeated pattern, it's the chemical body, the program body, and then the feeling is what we're using to attune our consciousness to that level of, okay, ding, that's true. And not that it has to be the truth, but it's true. It's true in the body, it's true in that knowingness. And when we can separate those two, and then we can listen to people speaking from that place of feeling and having it shift to a knowing, then we trust in what it is that, and not just a interview like this, but when you're talking to somebody and you're like, something's just a little off here. I'm not getting that truth. So they're saying all the right things, but it's not registering as truth. And then we start to trust in that disresonance because I don't know. We'll go into kind of our conversation that we're having. I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole here.
I love
I'm
it.
just
I'm
gonna
with
turn
you.
it over to you.
I'm with you, Alice, on this one. We're going down the rabbit hole. No, it really is the truth. I don't know whether you want me to speak right now. I was
Yes,
just
I want you to take this over.
okay. So, I mean, this is where the attunement is so critical. And I get in this conversation with a lot of people and methods. Like I've jumped in on a few of your conscious sort of like healing processes where you're attuning people and you're using your oracle cards that I think you created. And like, listen to me. I need everyone to hear this, ladies and gentlemen and ladies. You get right into the center of that, and that is potent stuff. You don't have to have your eyes open or closed. There is a resonance that's taking place that is it'll tell you everything you need to know. And this is what Jules and I are speaking of when it comes to knowing. And that, that old expression, know thyself. I don't, it's a little corny and a little cheesy, but it's true because there's a signature where, and I like to also get people to understand when they merge into, so most people that come to me are either light workers, psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, doctors, Chinese medicine doctors, chiropractors, functional medicine, you name it. They're all in a space of an attempt of healing.
Mm,
What happens is when you don't know who you are, you start to separate and you embody the persona that identifies that you see in the mirror. And with that is problematic because you start tapping into your life force energy. And
mm,
the end result is you will burn out. Most of my teachers, anyone that I've had like on this physical plane 30 years ago, they're all dead
mm.
for the simple reason that they tap into their physical energy. You need to realize that this is not what this is about. When you embody this present moment, you are all things. And so there is no limit. You're abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And so when you have a conversation, when you're engaging in this intelligence and you are the intelligence, you're not tapped out. You could have a conversation for, I mean, I mean, to my own admission, I had a podcast with one of my guests is 7 hours. And it just happens. And when you get into great conversation, and I can literally sit here and just like we're having this conversation, and you'll know whether you're telling yourself what you want to hear or you're telling yourself the truth because you never want to tap into that. And it's not a fear-based thing. You'll just realize that you've been deceived and manipulated, and your ego is driving your intention.
Yes.
And so that ego intention thing will present itself in I'm really tired. I'm a channeler, but I don't like, there's only so much I can do the course of the day. And, when I'm healing people, I've got all these broken people and they always want something from me. And you can start listening to your language and how you're embodying what it is you're experiencing. And it will be self evident that you are not that present moment that Jules and I are speaking of. You're not that abundance, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite intelligence. And so that could be your first identifier, going, okay, maybe I need to process this a little bit more, reset, look at a different angle, because I'm literally giving away my life force, and it's like a candle. It burns down, and it's not really that hard to attune to the present moment. Once you get someone like Jules or myself that can tune you in, you're there, and it becomes more and more powerful. And I love the way that you mentioned, you touched on the way it's sort of like you come in and then you sort of, it's like a bellows. You start to pulsate it, and you resonate and you get higher, resonate, get higher. And the more you sit into it, I attribute it to like, imagine you're driving down a highway in the rain and there's a car in front of you. You want to sit in the groove behind that car, so that it's your the inertia of the ground, the oil, everything is being broken, and you're grooving into it, and you're creating this path for yourself. And that also is evident in the teaching. When you teach someone something, like Jules is teaching you, I'm teaching you, you embody that. And then it becomes really evident by your expression every day that this is becoming even more like, I know that, I imagine when you first started your journey, you can tap in now, just you are in, you're already in. I'm getting super high right now. You're here right now. So this moment is something that you progress to. It may be problematic from someone who's first starting, but once you continue to follow the method and the processes of cultivation, it will become more and more refined and in a much faster response time. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. Yes. It's, you know what I'm also feeling in that, kind of going back to that becoming consciously unconscious, is that we have the process of working our way there, but once we're there, we know when we're there, and we also know when we're not. And I think that that little bit of awareness is life changing. Oh, am I in my programming? Am I in the ego? Or am I holding my consciousness? And even if that other state is just the stillness, a lot of times we want to go into the stillness and we're like, okay, now what's the answer? What do I do? What do I do? And it's like, no, just let. And that's what I call holding consciousness in an abstract frequency. It's the ability to hold consciousness in that stillness. And I feel like that's where so many of us get tripped up, is because we want the our ego to be entertained. And so it's, we can still have the ego. Maybe I say, oh, we just put it in the back seat and give it some candy, and then hold you, so you can have it kind of back there, it's there, but you're focusing here. I was going to go somewhere with that. Oh, going back to our conversation about that intuitive hit of the knowing versus, where do I want to go with that? Because I feel like it's just so important. Well, let's just bring it into real life. What do you do when you feel the disresonance, when you're speaking with someone and you're hearing the words, but your body is feeling like the words aren't matching the frequency of, or that's what it would be for me. The words aren't matching the frequency or the truth, the knowingness. What would your next step be?
Well, when I'm interacting with someone,
Mhm.
I just put the foot on the pedal and just blast the resonance that I transmit,
Yeah.
and it has a rippling effect. It has a rippling effect on everything around you. Now, I do this a lot. I cheat with my kids. I've got 6 kids, so when it's story time, I do this a lot. And they're like, I don't want Dad to tell me a story." Well, because I cheat. So we start the story. It's like, okay. And they're like, "You're going to put us to sleep, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yes." And the story is, and good night, because you bring that in, right? You bring that game in, right? People will experience what we're speaking of right now through a visceral kinesthetic response. You're feeling it through your whole body. And this is present just as an observer. And so when you bring that in, for example, when I do it with my kids, it's like, oh, I already feel that. I mean, and it's an intention, but I'm clear. I can remove the personality and sit it in the, as Jules said, put it in the back seat, give it some candy, and be the present moment. And this is a mastery that you learn to remember who you are, and it always comes in the lens of Jules' training, my training, how you get there, and it's really palpable, and you will identify with that. And you know, it's I don't look at it as a disadvantage. If I see someone who's clearly full of the old proverbial BS and they're not transmitting, they're really not transmitting, I'll just blast more juice out and we all sing kumbaya. We all come together for a realization. And it's not in a sense of I'm attempting to dominate or control. I'm just creating a resonance in the space. Now, if someone's there and they're affected by it, just so happens they do, just like Jules, it just so happens it does. It's this unconscious knowing that you were speaking on. It's so powerful. It just becomes, you know, I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but you are embodied in all those things. There's a default. You don't have to think about it. It's an autonomous it's unconscious. It's an unconscious knowing of knowing unconsciously knowing. You will get what we're talking about. It's like it becomes your expression, right? Does that make sense?
It does. You know what? I'm gonna take it to this place. So when we get when so let's just because so many everybody that's listening to this is in some level of mastery, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's a kind of a looping cycle because we have the mirror neurons that we have to match the frequency of our environment in order to stay safe, or even go to the lowest frequency of our environment, and it just starts to happen unconsciously. But then when we're kind of in our normal frequency, our resonance, and then we're having a conversation, and you have that, ooh, something just shifted, like you can feel the disresonance, and that is the next step. It's not to match it. That's a level of mastery. It's to shine brighter, right? It's like, okay, well, now I'm just going to express the frequency of source through me even in a stronger way so that I can override the mirror neurons, because just like you can be in control of your emotions, you can also be in control of the programmed body. And I can have this experience through my mastery. And what is that? And then we stay open and curious, but we're attuning to that higher frequency. So I'm saying the exact same thing that you just said, but through my language. And it is really a powerful place to be. So I I really hope that everybody that's listening goes and practices this, because that is where we're all moving in mastery of what it is to be human, is that we are overriding that human experience through the emotion and the programming and the trauma and oh this and that and duality, and we're moving into the stillness, that
Mhm.
it's that purity, and that purity has an intelligence, and we can all sit and experience that. This is so good.
It's amazing because that's really I'll amen to that. Amen to that. Well, because it's really important that people understand when I always tell people if you're coming from biology, psychology, neurology, physiology, science, you're limited.
Yeah,
You have to understand that Jules is speaking of beyond the neuroplasticity, which a lot of people tend to get to. We had a conversation with someone that has an expression of these type of this type of language, and there's so much power to what that person's saying, yet it can be limited. It can distract someone from understanding that we're even beyond that. We're beyond all of it. It's like this present moment has nothing to do with the mirror neurons, where a lot of people will start with that. And it's a great way to get a level up, because if you're experiencing this right now, most people would reference that as your neurology is speaking to you and able to replicate what you're experiencing. Jules is going beyond that. We're going, okay, that's just the very limited programming of this physicality, which is nothing more than an anchor to this realm. This is not who you really are. It gives you the ability to play in the three, what someone would call the 3D, the 4D, the 5D, the 20D, however you want to put it. You get beyond that, this flesh and blood. And that's where people get caught up. But when they experience what you're just resonating at, and it just is a whole physical, representation of that. And she's not trying, she is just being. And push a little bit of juice on the pedal if there's something that needs to be raised. And you notice it's like that's your gift of healing. You might come into a space where you can feel and see this really low watt sort of stuff that is manipulating the space, and you just blast it a little bit, and all of a sudden people become joyful, euphoric. There is nothing wrong with having people remember who they are and raise that resonance.
So beautifully said. That is what the invitation for everyone that's listening is: go play with that and just see how powerful that frequency of source can be when we choose to put a focus and expand that focus in our world. I mean, not just in a conversation, in a room, just every part of your life, going to the grocery store, everything, because I call like living on the other side. It's right. It's like we have the matrix and all the programming, and then poof, we pop up on the other side and you're like, oh, everything is beautiful from up here. Everything is clean. And regardless of what's going on around, there's a clean, crisp energy about it. And it just becomes fascinating.
Yeah, it's compelling. Absolutely. That's sort of like an idea that's conceptual to most when you envelop this consciousness that we speak of, but as a whole, you're merging the conscious and unconscious process. So this would come back to what you spoke on when it's like an unconscious knowing. It's like your very expression is this resonance. It doesn't leave you. It just is. It's like a spiritual chemtrail. I don't know, maybe. Right? It's like you just wherever you go, you're radiating this. And there's just not enough of it. But what a lot of people, I had a neurologist on my podcast, and he was saying that maybe 20 years ago, 1% of the population were meditating. Now he's realizing that through his own measurements, I'm not going to quote him on that. I have no idea whether they're accurate or not, but he's claiming that 20% of the population is now meditating. Now that is huge. Now then it brings me to another friend of mine, Alexis from Ascension Diaries, that reads Schumann resonance.
Mm,
So the Schumann resonance, she's even identifying it's moving up. And so it's going past the 7.83, which would be representative of a brain wave that might be more in the line with theta. And we are Earth, and Earth is us, and all these type of good things. And so you move up higher, and she's seeing quite a predictability that there's a hertz frequency of 40 to 50 hertz over the next year and a half. Now,
mm,
that would be representative of a gamma brainwave. But if we were to look at it from a neurologist perspective, a brain science, that this is what they have identified as full consciousness. Now,
mm.
Jules and I would speak of it in a different way, but like just say we use that lens. So full consciousness, when you get in those hertz that are above 40, miracles start happening. Now, you use like a spectrum of hertz frequencies. Do you notice that it can even vary, even at a lower hertz frequency, you still get a epiphany, a miracle, or does it have to stay in that high state?
So I actually, for myself, I convert hertz to scalar so that it's more of a choice. So, because when you convert to scalar, the scalar frequency is consistent. It doesn't diminish over time and space. So a hertz wave, it does. And so it has well, just like what is, it's a little more of a wave. And the reason that I do that is so that my consciousness knows exactly what it is when I hit it. And
Mm.
honestly, the only place I go is that frequency of source. But what I can experience in a different way is where I enter the frequency of source. So if the frequency of source is always 963 and I'm holding 40, my experience of source is going to be 40, right? But that's where it's like, oh, I'm only at 40, I can move up. And so it's easier to measure, I find. But I wanted to go back to the because of the earth itself is in this that frequency is raising. My fascination is, yes, consciousness, consciousness, conscious. It's all amazing. But what I keep remembering is that, but it's only a tool. It's only the tool. So what's happening on a physical level, on a DNA level, where that frequency is actually stored? And that's what fascinates me is what's going to happen when our actual physical body moves from 7.5 to 7.8 to 40. I mean, that's a huge difference. And I'm saying this because I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of people are starting to have physical symptoms because the body is raising in frequency, but then our minds want to go in and name it, saying, oh, it's this, and oh, it's this, and they start to create all these timelines around things that are in distortion when really it's just our bodies are raising in frequency. Have you had that experience?
Oh yeah, I'm noticing it a lot. I mean, I just want to, not that you don't know this, I just wanted to validate what you're experiencing. It's like I wouldn't even call it scalar for me. It's just chi,
Yeah.
which which is Tao, which is the mother of all things. And it's interesting what I've observed, and I measured my brainwaves on this. I will, you know, realize that resonance of chi, which is the source, and then I'll measure my brainwave at like 100 to 400 hertz, and even at that 400 hertz, I'm exhibiting and witnessing physical healings before my eyes.
Mhm.
So I'm bringing in the resonance of the chi, but on a measurable electromagnetic field, which is what Jules and I are talking about, is not measurable in this spectrum. So this is the wow factor, the secret source, the all things, and that is not measured. And I'll be at like 100, 400, and on the energy spectrum, I'm witnessing a physical healing before my very eyes, whether it's a bone fuse, or tissue resort back to its physical state from a tear or a scar or whatever. And so I see this and I'm like, okay, well, this is sort of like where you bring it, and that's that feeling that we're speaking of that gets that. And so people are exhibiting these sort of like effects where it's like an instantaneous thing where you know I got hit with it 30 years ago on my journey. Physical healings are I'm very familiar with it. That's something that I do, that I love,
Mm.
but it's becoming very, very, very common now. And this, I think, is a representative of how these frequencies are rising from the Earth's field, and it's coming out in the physical state. And then, of course, people are having to contend with this sort of like light beam that
Mhm.
they're not familiar with. And then that will rustle up their emotional content, and then it will identify as I'm having a breakdown or something, a psychotic episode, and it will present itself in that fashion. Is that what you're familiar with, or is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, a little bit. What I've noticed is the rise of people feeling anxiety. And what I always say is just like step back and just acknowledge, because what you're considering anxiety is actually your body is raising at a higher frequency. And because it doesn't recognize what it's becoming, it's releasing those chemicals that we would consider to be anxiety because our body is literally afraid of what it's becoming. That's because it's shifting out of the primal experience of the body. But we have to like go through the primal experience of the body. But if we focus on what the feeling really is. Because if you sit in it for even just a second, what you'll find is it's actually an extremely high frequency, and that's what your body is becoming. And I just think it's so fascinating and it's so fun. So I guess the invitation in this is, when you want to name what your experience is, just step back and step into the experience and let it show you what it is, not the program part of you, but that knowing part of you.
I love that because that's really, that present moment that we speak of
Mhm,
is that now. I think some people will be like, well, that sounds really good, but how do I do that?
mhm,
Because they're embodying the emotion. I'm anxious. I'm going to get fired. My boyfriend cheated on me. There's just this myriad of things that they're identifying as place, person, or thing. And I really believe you and I are we're the same in that I don't get into the semantics of whether mommy gave me 5 cookies when I was 5. It's an energy, and you can really heal from that. You don't have to go. I personally would, Taoism, we have what we call soul retrieval, where you can present the Shen, which we call Shen Gong, which is the spiritual power, to this present moment. And you don't have to, the semantics is these stories. And
mhm.
people hear this, it's like, hey, the story, I used to be, you've heard the story. It's like, you're in the gym, you're working out, and then this 90-year-old guy comes over and goes, yeah, I still lift those weights like that. And it's like, oh, look, it served you. Clearly, you're 90 years old. Whatever you're doing, keep on doing it because you haven't submitted to the idea that you're of this physical body. And so, what would you say is like, you and I know that. And for me, I make sure people craft their emotion, their energetics. So it's so palpable that they can literally move it like an icon. Like, okay, I feel this anxiety, but it's really representative of a frequency. And I've had so many people that will contact me and go, Jufu, I'm feeling like my heart's going to pump out of my chest. And I'm like, okay, now go into the center of that and realize that your frequency is rising. It's not the anxiety. You didn't have coffee. You weren't told that you were going to die tomorrow. There wasn't any other catalyst that's giving you this experience. It's the frequency that we speak of that is presenting itself, and you're leveling up. This is a level up right now. Let's pop the crystal, whatever we need. This is an expansive moment. So, what do you think that would be the easiest way for you to help someone get there? Because we understand it from an energetic thing, but how would someone like present it? Like, okay, well, no, my boyfriend cheated on me. No, I'm losing my job. No, because it becomes problematic for most people. And they're like, all this mumbo jumbo means nothing to me right now. I'm the emotion.
I'm in suffering. Well, the first thing I would say is, let's wait for the chemical
Mm,
response to pass, because it's can be really hard to go into a higher state of consciousness when the body is in a primal response, which there's no like, let it pass, right? Like, why do we have to have it happen? And then there's a little bit of a mastery in, okay, I'm not going to make any decisions until
mm,
the chemical is passed, and that's a level of mastery, to just not feel like, oh, I have to do something, get out of this feeling right now. It's like, oh, okay, I can actually sit in this feeling and I'm not going to die. Wow, okay, I did it. And then you start to move into the higher consciousness. But one of the things I really am playing with people a lot, because everybody wants to go, why is this happening, why is this happening? If I know why, then I'll heal. If I know why, I'll heal. Or when I know why, then my whole life is going to be better. And it's like, how about, instead of why, what is this showing me? What information is this experience showing me, so that I can make an informed decision on how to create a different environment. So it could be literally, well, it's showing me that I don't like it when my boyfriend cheats on me. That feels bad. Well, what information is it? Well, if that feels bad, is this a choice that I want to continue to make? I mean, how hard is that? It's like, I can either say, yes, I want to keep repeating this pattern, or no. And now I'm going to make a choice to create something different. And so look how fast that was. It's not, oh, now I have to go into my past and look at why I chose this guy. And it's like, oh, it's because when I was 3. And it's like, no, 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 no. It's what? And then you ascend. It's what? You ascend. Get the information, make a choice, ascend.
Wow. I mean, that just there is like a literally an incantation to embody that. As I love the way you say it, I do that a lot too. An invitation to embody that, and then you can level up just from hearing you say that. And I like to bring people's attention to linguistics. You want to be psychic 101, like you get a crash course. Just listen to the words that come out of someone's mouth, and that will tell you everything you need to know about them on an unconscious level. And so that linguistic is so powerful because the why just keeps you not in a good way, the present moment. No, the why keeps you in a state of why me? Why God? Why now? Why this person? And what you'll do is, quite frankly, just go through this filter of deconstructing your self worth, your value, your knowing, and you'll just stay in the rat in the wheel. I like to call it the rat in the wheel over and over again. And it's so empowering when Jules is like saying, what? What? Not why. What is and what is the message that's coming from this very experience?
Yeah.
And I would even say you could even add the how. How do I heal? How do I what do I learn? I much prefer that. What is far more powerful than how? And
Yeah.
what do I learn from this and being able to expand? I think some people may possibly look at us and go, yeah, 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 but how do I get to the what if I'm still in the why?
Mm,
And like that mastery as through your own admission, that's a mastery. That's like, guess what? I like to call it the first point of healing is being accountable for your behavior. This
mm.
is a moment of realization where there is a little bit of engagement, guys. Just a little got a little, engage in yourself, invest in yourself just a little bit and go, you know what? Okay, this is part of my process. This is like realizing that I'm not telling myself what I want to hear. I'm telling myself the truth, not this delusional state that, one of my favorite TV personalities, Judge Judy, would say, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining, sir. You don't want to pee on your own leg. You want to realize that it's not raining, that you are having this present moment, and your responsibility to yourself, value yourself enough to realize that, okay, I got these concepts and I've got this sense, I'm embodying this feeling that Jules has given me. Now I need to identify with that. This this is clearly not what it is. I've already gone through the sum of things. It's not the boyfriend. It's not the job. It's not I am literally deciding right now that emotion is more important than me. That
Mm,
emotion is more valuable than myself. And I always remind people of that when they're in anger. It's like
mm,
you've decided your anger is far more valuable to you than yourself, your relationship, your family, a bigger part of your realization. And people do this all the time. They go, you know what? Wow. Wow, that dumbs things down. Now, here's an interesting one that I kind of used, but it was like a very conscious admission. A friend of the channel, of my channel, Miguel from a Gnosis channel, and he said, "You know what? Every day I wake up, I just do one thing, and I go, I'm going to die today." Okay, wow. Phew. Okay, now what's valuable? What
mm,
is really valuable now that I'm going to die today? So what's important to me?
mm,
My anger because someone stole the last Oreo cookie, someone gave me the bird in the parking lot, I don't have enough, you know, bags of chips in the cupboard. I'm caught up in my Christian Louboutin collection, whatever it is, right? Right. What is really valuable when you realize that, and it's not fear.
mm,
It comes from the scripture within Taoism. We just remind the man mortality is real,
mm,
and so this human expression needs to be valued, but you also need to realize what is the semantics of all the stuff that Jules and I are talking about, the emotional content that is the distraction, the dukkha, and you get caught up in it, and you identify as it being your truth, and it's not. And so when you enter into that, just the way we explained it, it can't be more powerful than that. And that incantation of how you unravel that and realize it for what it is so powerful. I mean, people can walk away from that today and really embody that as a tool to expand their conscious dial. This doesn't get any easier than that. But I think putting things into perspective is, well, what's the truth, and what am I telling myself I want? I'm feeding it. It's like you get that little quiet whisper, eat that pint of ice cream. You're going to go on a bender with your friends on the weekend. It sounds like a good idea. Well, the last time I was in hospital getting my stomach pumped, but no, it sounds like a great idea. Where is this information coming from? Is it a high resonance? And that's where I believe Jules would go straight to. You can feel what that is. That's a low resonance. It's not a high one. It's not an expression of beyond this electromagnetic spectrum. And so when you do that, you can go, whoa, that voice is not for my best interest. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's speaking to me. Eat the cookie, drink the beer, have the party. And I always tell people, look, this can be valuable to you till it's not.
Mhm.
People tend to identify as, you know drugs and alcohol as problematic. Yes, it can be more than that. It can be detrimental to your physical body. What does it mean to you right now? People go on the psychonaut route. It's
Mhm.
valuable to a certain extent. I think through your own admission, you discovered and were able to resonate. This is very rare. I must tell people that you were able to expose yourself and hold that resonance. Most people get a glimpse and then they lose it, and they don't get to hold it. Um, I don't know why I feel like I'm on my own channel. Can you expand? I'm like, because that's kind of cool. It's really profound, that story. I don't think, if people haven't heard Jules' story, that part of being able to access that, because people chase that and then they lose it, and
Mhm.
you only dialed out more. Was that a search and discovery, or it sort of happened pretty quickly?
Oh gosh, what a good question. Oh, well, I think I should back up that I did have, when I worked with Eva White Desert Eagle, when I worked way back, she was the shaman that I worked with. And a big part of what she taught was releasing DMT in a natural way and how to hold consciousness there. Even though
Mm.
she wasn't saying it in those words, we were doing it through ceremony and sweat lodges and these different experiences. And when this was probably only a year ago, I had a friend that was like, "Hey, let's do psychedelics." And so we did, and it was the first time that I had done it. Actually, it was the second time, but the other time it was with my daughters, and I don't even know if they were real mushrooms, so nothing really happened. But so we do it, and we go into it, and the whole time I kept hearing, don't follow the trip. It was like that is like my consciousness was telling me that, or the voice behind it is like, don't follow the trip, don't follow the trip. And so every time my consciousness would want to start to go into the trip, it just kept going back and just holding it there. And then all of a sudden I popped up on top, and I was like, oh, now I get. And it's like, not that I didn't get it, but it was such a powerful experience to have it in that. And then my friend would come and sit next to me, and so I would start to, like, go into his trip, and I was like, "No, I'm coming back up here." And so it was actually a lot of fun, and it was a practice just like in real life. It was a practice to be able to have something that's such a powerful, whatever it's doing to your body when you're in that trip, but to have that all going on in a really powerful way, but then being able to hold my consciousness on top of it. And I will say the next day I had a pretty big headache because it was a lot of work to do that. But when in real life, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's so much easier because you don't have this other," but then we have reality. But that's why I feel like if it's done in the right way, it can be a great training, but it's definitely not a go-to. And I feel like if there's any reason to be do it, it's for that. It's not to go into the trip, it's to master the trip.
Wow. You know, it's like most people walk away, probably 99%. Most people that come to me, I show them how to get into a DMT experience from the alchemical
Mm,
for days. Not like 20 minutes, not like an hour, for days. And that's where Jules, through her own admission, what she's saying to us is you're there, you get there. And this is not common. I want people to understand this. So, you know, be sort of more exploratory in realizing whether this is for you or not, because it's not common. Most people get a glimpse and they're forever dissatisfied with the outcome, that they cannot acquire this resonance. And that was part of your guides. That's interesting. Um, what do you, when you get your information, is it just in representation to a knowing, or do you have guides that you refer to, or you're just the now?
yeah, it's
Wow.
just it's inside of me.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I was having this conversation um with another interview that I had right before we were talking, and he actually asked, "Well, how do you receive the information?" And I said, I hear it through my cells. It really does come from my DNA. And I've gotten so good at it. I do feel like a Google system. And I know you understand that because I see it in you too, right? And so I feel like the sense of, oh, it's my guides, it's this, it's that. It's really all we're doing is we have to have that relationship with the intelligence of like, okay, I'm hearing it, and now I'm going to put, okay, I'm hearing it from this, and I'm hearing it from this. But then the more we practice and more we practice and more we practice, it's just becomes, it's the intelligence. And then there's my tool, my consciousness that's attuning to that. And it just gets really, really tight to where there's no interference. It's just boom, 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 boom.
It's what I like to refer to. It's no longer a dialogue, it's a monologue.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, yeah. And
Said.
that's it. That's all things. It's like right back to what you said. It's like that unconscious knowing, and Lao Tzu calls it the being, you know, the stages of it. And that monologue is really you, as you would say, trusting, knowing this is it. You know, I get a lot of moments where I'm like Latsu, and I still have a relationship with him. Maybe it's just my childlike state I had. He's a facet of information. There's no question about it. And so I have my relationship with Latsu. I have a relationship with all my teachers, but they're facets of the consciousness. And
Mhm.
so as you resonate higher, um, it's it's that it's that knowing. So I embody that information. It's the Yugal, it is the now, right? It's really, really powerful stuff. But when you realize that you know it, and I had these profound moments, I sit there and I could transcribe, a life, someone's life's work in hours. You know, my wife will be like taking notes and writing stuff down because we've got to do a workshop or something like that. And she's just like, where does this come from? And I'm like, I have no idea. It's just there and it just comes out. And if I don't need sustenance, water or food, if I don't ask for it, I can just keep going.
Yeah.
And do you experience that type of like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you were talking about tapping into your teachers, and because I have that experience too. I have two friends of mine that passed away, but it's like it's not like I'm talking to them though. It's like but you have, I don't know how, like, how do you explain it? It's like you just know what it feels like to be in communication, but the communication is always the same frequency. It's the only way I can explain it, but I love that your experience with your wife and your speaking and it just coming out, it's just coming out because I feel like that's where we're all headed, right? We're all headed to where everything is going to be new because it's not going to come from a programmed experience. It's not going to become, I interviewed this guy. He's actually a really good friend of mine, and he had written this book, and he was like, really all books are, what every teacher is doing is teaching something that they learned from somebody else. And I was like, that has never been my experience. Like, I had my apprenticeships up to when I was about 30, but I was never taught like a religion. I was taught tools to access consciousness. So the teachings were taught to access consciousness. And then knew, okay, the only way I'm going to keep going is to not listen anymore and to just go inside. And I feel like that's where everybody's going to start going. It's like, it's the practice, right? It's the practice, it's the doing that is gonna get you there, not the learning. Like,
Mm.
grab the tools, learn the tools of how to use your consciousness in the correct way. But once you get that tapped in, that's what you're gonna have is it just comes out.
I'm pretty sure you're a Taoist in a past life. We have a saying: if you have to learn it, you do not know it. If you know it, you don't have to learn it.
I love that.
And that's really what you're speaking. That's what I am embodying. What you're speaking of, and that's what I know. And
Yeah.
that's how you get there. And it's like that feeling again. The charge we're having. It's the feeling now.
Mhm.
This is it. And you can't learn that. It becomes this state. And so when you resonate, it's not about learning it, it's about remembering. So it's never left you. It's about Jules blasting you with this super sauce, like I'm super high, soupy. I will tell the audience if you quote me on something today, I don't know what I said, whatever it is. It's because you had to get there. I'm out there as I should be because that's when you're living your life when you are void of time and space, where you
Mm,
just go, you know what? I don't know what time it is. When you're counting the seconds and the minutes and the hours of your life, you need to adjust a few things. You need to stop for a minute, take a deep breath, and go, okay, wow, this has been painful. Oh, thank goodness it's Friday. Oh, it's Monday again. And this is a programming that people get set up in, and then they are trapped. They've
mhm.
trapped themselves. And that's sort of an instant indicator if you're really embodying and really embracing your life is you don't know what day it is. You don't know what time it is. It's just, it's now.
I love that.
Yeah.
I want to repeat what you said. It's not about learning, it's about remembering. I think that's a really powerful statement.
That's everything. This conversation today has been all about that. That's about everyone. Just when they listen to this, they'll be like, whoa, I
Mhm.
just got a Google crash course in PhD in Google right now, and that's how it works. And it goes beyond what you consider this limited reality that we're in, and that's when you know you're there. You're floating. Things are seamless. Synchronicity, serendipity, all just becomes at one with all, and you just float through it. Most people will be like, you are just one lucky SOB, aren't you?
Mm,
Everything is no, it's just I'm listening and I'm remembering and I know. And so a lot of people might perceive that and process for yourself when you discover and think that it's, oh, you're arrogant. You're kind of like they throw that word narcissistic. No, I'm just confident because I know who I am.
yeah,
Do with anything else.
I love that. Well, San, I know we're running out of time, and I know we went over time, but that's
Yeah.
okay. Why don't you do a shout out to where people can find you
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Come and check me out at the Way 126 Experience on YouTube. You can check me out on all social, Instagram, all podcast platforms. I have an app that'll blow your mind. Come and check that out. That's the Way 126 experience. Basically, you hit play. In the first couple of seconds, you'll feel like you've had five pina coladas, a full body massage, your head, arms. And people go, "Whoa, I'm just a janitor from McDonald's," and you could be a guru like Dalai Lama, but you are going to have your body speak to you.
Mm.
That's what this is about: is remembering, and it'll happen fast. So I'm just grateful. Thank you for bringing me on the podcast and inviting me. It's awesome.
Oh,
Uh,
it's been my honor. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes. If you're watching us on YouTube, it'll be there, and on the podcast, it'll be there as well. Well, San, thank you so much for bringing your. I knew this was going to be an amazing interview, and it definitely was. And I appreciate everything that you brought, and just your love and wisdom is. It's just so I could just float in it all day.
well, you had me at hello. You know what I'm saying? So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I'm grateful for you. And this is a part of the my journey. This is my realizing and creating and remembering incredible bonds like the one we have. That's just self-evident. And
Yeah.
you realize that the universe just brings it to you. You
Mm,
wow, it's like I've never not known this person. I've never
yeah.
not been in this resonance. I've never not experienced this. And you just know. Ugle, here we come.
Beautiful. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and we are sending you all so much love and a big quantum hug until we meet again.